One note from a flight attendant changed everything. A simple message, a lingering look, and suddenly, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The male narrator, Eli, is on a long-haul flight, sitting by the window. His mind is wandering when he notices Emily, the flight attendant. She's confident, poised, with an air of elegance. She notices him too, her eyes lingering for a second longer than usual as she moves down the aisle. Eli is immediately drawn to her, but he keeps his distance, unsure of the quiet magnetism she exudes. The hum of the airplane's engines filled the air, a steady drone that should have put me to sleep, but instead, my mind wandered. The cramped seats of a long-haul flight offered little comfort, yet I couldn't shake the restless feeling in my chest. Maybe it was the anticipation of arriving at my destination or perhaps the monotony of the endless sky. But then, I noticed her. The flight attendant. Her name was Emily, I learned later, but for now, she was just an enigma, an elegant figure gliding down the narrow aisles of the airplane. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed out of place in the small, crowded cabin. Her hair was swept back into a neat bun, but a few loose strands framed her face, catching the soft, artificial light from above. There was something about the way she carried herself, like she belonged to a world far removed from this confined space, a world of luxury and poise. As she passed by me, our eyes met. At first, it was just a brief glance, a passing moment in a busy flight. But then, her eyes lingered just a second longer than they should have. Not in a way that was overtly flirtatious, but in a way that was curious, almost as if she had noticed something about me that I hadn't noticed about myself. My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly turned my gaze back to the window, hoping I hadn't imagined it. I wasn't sure why I was so drawn to her. I had always prided myself on being composed, on not letting anything distract me too easily. But Emily wasn't like the others. There was an energy about her, a quiet confidence, that pulled me in. Throughout the flight, I found myself watching her more often than I should have. She moved down the aisle with such purpose, her voice calm and professional as she offered drinks, snacks, and blankets to the passengers. Her smile was warm but reserved, always polite, never too personal. And yet, every time she passed me, it felt like a secret message was being exchanged in the space between us. I caught myself studying her more closely than I had ever studied anyone before. Her uniform was crisp, neat, perfectly fitting, yet it was her presence that made her stand out. She didn't need to speak loudly or call attention to herself, there was a quiet magnetism to her that radiated effortlessly. When she bent down to retrieve a drink from the cart or reached above her head to adjust the overhead compartments, I noticed the small details, the way her fingers brushed against the edges of things, the way she seemed to be in complete control of everything around her, yet always at ease. My thoughts were interrupted when she returned to my row, this time offering a polite smile as she asked if I needed anything. Her eyes flickered toward mine once more, that same knowing look, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. There was something unspoken in the way she held my gaze, something that made the air feel thicker, more electric. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I knew one thing for sure, I was hooked. She moved on to the next passenger before I could even reply. And as she disappeared down the aisle, I was left with a sense of longing, a feeling I hadn't expected to experience on a flight. But something had shifted, and I couldn't ignore it. I tried to focus on the book in my lap, but all I could think about was her. As the flight progresses, Emily unexpectedly slides a folded note onto Eli's tray table. She leans in close, whispering, "Don't lose this," before moving away. Eli's heart skips a beat. Confused yet intrigued, he opens the note under the dim light of the cabin, reading her cryptic message. The flight continued its slow, predictable rhythm, buckle up, drink service, another round of snacks, and yet, something was different. My mind was no longer occupied with the dullness of air travel. It was occupied with her. Emily. The flight attendant who, with nothing more than a glance, had completely unsettled me. I was trying to focus on the in-flight magazine, flipping through pages that held no interest for me, when I felt the faintest shift in the air, a movement just behind my shoulder. I glanced up, and there she was, her uniform neatly pressed, her movements still graceful even in the cramped confines of the airplane aisle. She was placing a tray down in front of a passenger across the aisle, her back momentarily turned to me. But as she moved away, something unexpected happened. From the corner of my eye, I saw her reach into her pocket and then slide something folded onto my tray table. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. But then, the slight rustle of paper caught my attention, and my gaze snapped to the note resting just in front of me. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what was happening. Was it a mistake? A note intended for someone else? Before I could reach for it, she leaned in closer, her voice low but clear. "Don't lose this," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. The word sent a shiver down my spine, and before I could react, she was gone, moving down the aisle with that same quiet confidence, as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. My hands shook slightly as I reached for the note, unfolding the paper with a mix of confusion and anticipation. The dim light of the cabin made the words difficult to read at first, but when I squinted and focused, I saw it: "Meet me at the back after the last drink service." I stared at the words, my heart racing. A sudden surge of excitement flooded me, quickly followed by a wave of uncertainty. What was this? Was she being playful? Serious? I couldn't tell. I wasn't even sure if I should be excited or scared. But the adrenaline was already taking over. My thoughts raced, and I couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity. Something about her, about this moment, felt like it was opening a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. But the temptation was undeniable. I folded the note back up, my mind reeling. I was already counting the minutes until the final drink service. The note was a simple sentence: "Meet me at the back after the last drink service." Eli is torn between feeling exhilarated and cautious. Should he act on it? He's never met a woman like Emily, and the idea of a secret meeting sparks something deep inside him. He watches her as she moves down the aisles, wondering what could be behind her mysterious note. The minutes seemed to stretch on forever as the flight continued. I couldn't focus on anything, not the dull hum of the engines, not the occasional announcement over the PA system. My eyes kept drifting back to Emily, watching her every movement as she walked up and down the aisle, effortlessly gliding between the rows of seats. Each time she passed, my heart would race a little faster. The note from earlier, the cryptic message, still burned in my mind. "Meet me at the back after the last drink service." What was she playing at? Was this just a moment of flirtation? Maybe she was used to this, mysterious, teasing encounters with the passengers. Or was it something more? Could it be real? I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a casual encounter. The way she looked at me, the way she moved, it felt different. There was an unspoken connection between us, something that transcended the usual small talk on a flight. But at the same time, my cautious side urged me to hesitate. This could be a mistake. She was a flight attendant. I was just another passenger. Maybe it was all in my head. But I couldn't ignore the pull. Every time she moved past me, her scent seemed to linger in the air, soft and floral, like lavender and fresh linen. And her eyes, those deep, dark eyes that seemed to see right through me. They'd met mine again, just a moment ago, and I saw something there, something fleeting but undeniable. Was it curiosity? Or something more? The flight was starting its final descent, and the announcement for the last drink service echoed overhead. My pulse quickened. I had no idea what to expect when I met her at the back. I didn't know if I was walking into a chance for something meaningful or simply setting myself up for embarrassment. As she began preparing for the final round of drinks, I felt a growing mix of excitement and nerves swirling inside me. I tried to focus on the conversation happening around me, nothing but idle chatter, the usual banter between passengers. But I was a million miles away, lost in the thought of what might happen in just a few moments. Would she be there, waiting for me, with that same mysterious smile? Would she tell me more, or would it all just be a game? I didn't know, but the intrigue was consuming me. The longer I thought about it, the more I realized there was no turning back now. The anticipation was building, and all I could do was wait. After the last drink service, Eli hesitates but walks to the back of the plane, where Emily is waiting. The dim lighting, the quiet hum of the plane, and the distant chatter of passengers create an intimate setting. Emily is leaning against the galley counter, her eyes meeting his with a mix of warmth and something deeper. Eli is drawn to her, unsure of what she's about to say or do. The cabin lights flickered slightly, signaling that the final drink service was wrapping up. I felt my heart pounding as the passengers settled back into their seats, preparing for landing. I had one last decision to make. I glanced down at the note again, the paper now worn from being folded and refolded in my hands. It was time to act. I stood slowly, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Every step toward the back of the plane felt heavier than the last, but the pull of curiosity kept me moving forward. I was about to do something I hadn't done before, step into an unknown space where nothing was certain. But there was no turning back now. When I reached the rear galley, the low hum of the plane seemed to disappear, replaced by an eerie quiet. In the dim lighting, Emily stood leaning against the counter, the soft glow of the overhead lights casting a halo around her. She looked serene, her posture casual yet somehow poised, as if she were waiting for something, or someone. Her eyes lifted to meet mine as I stepped into the space. There was no surprise in her gaze, no need to speak, it was as if she had been expecting me all along. Her expression was soft, almost welcoming, but there was an undercurrent of something deeper, something I couldn't quite place. Was it warmth? Or something more intense? For a brief moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the plane's engines and the distant chatter of the other passengers seemed miles away. All that mattered was the space between us, the quiet tension hanging in the air. Emily's gaze never left mine, and I could feel the weight of her attention, pulling me in. My pulse quickened, and I could hear my breath a little louder than usual. "Eli," she finally said, her voice low but steady, breaking the silence. "I'm glad you came." Her words hung in the air, and I wasn't sure if she was simply being polite or if there was something more in her tone. The way she said my name, like it was a secret between us, sent a thrill through me. She was so close now, her presence overwhelming in a way that made it hard to focus. I wasn't sure what to say. Should I ask why I was here? Or was it better to just let the moment unfold? The vulnerability in her eyes seemed to invite me closer, but my hesitation kept me rooted in place. The tension between us was palpable, and I had no idea where it was going. "Are you going to just stand there, or do you want to sit?" she asked, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. The invitation was clear, but the uncertainty still lingered in my chest. Emily opens up, revealing a glimpse of her personal life. She speaks of the long hours she works, the loneliness she sometimes feels despite being surrounded by people. Eli, in turn, shares his own struggles with being misunderstood. The two find themselves drawn together in a moment of shared vulnerability, the tension growing between them. Emily's eyes softened as she watched me hesitate, her gentle smile fading into something more sincere, more intimate. She stepped away from the galley counter, her movements graceful but slower now, as if she were trying to give me the space to breathe. I could feel her assessing me, sensing the apprehension I was trying so hard to hide. She exhaled softly and leaned back against the counter, folding her arms across her chest as though preparing herself to speak. "It's funny, isn't it?" she said, her voice quieter now, laced with something that felt like unspoken honesty. "How you can be surrounded by people all the time, but still feel so alone." I blinked, caught off guard by the rawness in her words. For a moment, I forgot about the fact that we were in a cramped airplane galley, and all I could focus on was the vulnerability she had just exposed. Her posture, once so poised and controlled, had softened, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw a glimpse of something human in her, something fragile. She continued, her voice quieter now, as if she were speaking only for me. "I spend my days taking care of people, giving them what they need. But at the end of the day, when the last service is over, and I head back to my hotel room, I realize how empty it can all feel. There it was. The truth. The loneliness that hid behind the perfect, composed image she presented to the world. I didn't know what to say. My thoughts raced, my heart aching for her. There was a part of me that understood all too well. I wasn't just a passive listener, her words struck something deep within me. I get it, I finally said, my voice surprisingly steady. It's like no matter how hard you try, no one really sees you for who you are. People think they know you, but they don't. They just see what they want to see. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world outside the airplane seemed to vanish. The isolation that both of us carried felt almost tangible, hanging between us like a fragile thread that was connecting us in ways neither of us had expected. The tension that had been thick in the air shifted, no longer just the electric charge of attraction. Now, it felt like something deeper, an understanding, a shared space of raw emotion. Emily uncrossed her arms and took a small step closer, her gaze never leaving mine. I've always had to be the strong one, she said softly. But sometimes, I just want someone to see me, really see me. Her words hung in the air, and I realized that in this moment, she wasn't just speaking to a passenger, she was speaking to me. And I, for the first time, wasn't sure if I was ready for the depth of connection we were building, but I knew one thing for sure, I didn't want to walk away from it. I took a small step forward, closing the distance between us. I see you, I whispered, and for the first time since we met, I felt like she saw me, too. As the conversation continues, the connection deepens. They don't speak of romance, but the attraction is palpable in every lingering glance, every pause between words. Emily's closeness stirs something in Eli that he's not ready to confront, but he can't pull away. There's a magnetic pull, a tension that neither of them acknowledges directly but both feel acutely. The quiet hum of the airplane seemed to fade as Emily and I stood there, locked in a moment that neither of us wanted to break. She was so close now, closer than I'd ever imagined, her scent swirling around me, a mix of lavender and something deeper, something that felt like the very essence of her. Her eyes held mine with an intensity one hadn't expected, and it made my chest tighten in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. We hadn't spoken for a while, but the silence between us felt comfortable, charged with something neither of us wanted to name just yet. The small distance that had remained between us in the beginning had slowly closed, and now, I was aware of every inch of it. I could hear the soft rustling of her uniform as she shifted slightly, and each movement felt exaggerated in the stillness of the cabin. Her eyes flickered to my lips for a brief moment, just long enough for me to catch it, before returning to my gaze. The air between us thickened, heavy with something unspoken. It wasn't overt, nothing obvious, but I could feel it. The attraction. The desire. I shifted on my feet, suddenly too aware of how close we were, how my every breath seemed to sync with hers. My hand itched to reach out, to brush a strand of hair away from her face, but I held back. The urge was there, undeniable, but something kept me from crossing that invisible line between closeness and intimacy. She hadn't moved, hadn't pulled away, and that alone told me everything I needed to know. Emily, I whispered, barely a breath, unsure if the words would even make sense. Her gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw something akin to longing in her eyes. But before either of us could say anything more, the noise of the plane shifted as the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing the descent. The moment was over, as quickly as it had arrived. The tension that had simmered between us suddenly felt impossible to ignore. I could feel the weight of it in the pit of my stomach, like a knot that couldn't be undone. But despite the subtle shift, I couldn't bring myself to break away. Not yet. I glanced at Emily, who was still standing close, her body slightly angled toward me, her eyes still reflecting that quiet, unspoken intensity. I think it's almost time to get back to your seat, I said, my voice hoarse, trying to regain control. She nodded, but there was no rush in her movement, no eagerness to pull away. Instead, she gave me a small, knowing smile, one that made the heat rise in my chest once more. "I'll see you again," she said softly, her voice almost like a promise. And just like that, the tension between us held, unspoken, yet understood. I didn't need any more words to know that something had shifted, something that neither of us could deny anymore. As the flight begins its descent, their time together comes to an end. Emily gives him a final, lingering smile, slipping a small card into his hand before she leaves. Eli watches her walk away, his heart still racing, unsure of what just happened but deeply moved by the experience. The card simply reads, "Call me. I'll be waiting." The descent of the plane was a stark contrast to the slow, intimate moments we had just shared. The overhead lights flickered on as the cabin's atmosphere shifted to prepare for landing. The usual noise of seatbelts clicking and the gentle murmur of passengers resumed, but for me, the world felt strangely quiet. All I could focus on was Emily, her presence lingering like a soft echo in the air around me. She was moving down the aisle now, collecting the final trays and tidying up for the end of the flight. But when she passed my seat for the last time, she paused, just for a second. I looked up, and there it was again, her smile, the one that seemed to say more than words could ever convey. This time, it wasn't just polite. There was something deeper in it, something that made my chest tighten and my pulse quicken. "Take care, Eli," she said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the noise of the plane. But I heard it clearly. It was like a promise, a quiet acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us. Before I could respond, she leaned forward just enough to slip something into my hand, a small card, folded neatly, almost as if she had planned it all along. Her fingers brushed mine as she passed it to me, and the moment felt weighty, like a subtle yet undeniable connection had solidified in that one brief touch. I unfolded the card, my heart racing as I read the words written in her delicate script, "Call me. I'll be waiting." I stared at the card for a moment, the words dancing before my eyes, the reality of the situation slowly sinking in. This wasn't just a fleeting moment anymore, it was something real, something she was giving me the chance to explore. I glanced up, but she was already a few rows ahead, moving toward the rear of the plane to complete her duties. Her figure was disappearing into the crowd of passengers, and I couldn't help but watch her, my heart still racing, unsure of what exactly had just transpired. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't expected, a deep sense of fulfillment. I wasn't sure where this would lead, or if anything more would come of it, but I knew that this connection, however brief, had changed something in me. As the plane touched down, I folded the card and tucked it into my pocket, my mind buzzing with possibilities. The flight was over, but whatever came next felt like a beginning, not an ending. I didn't know what would happen if I called her, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to find out. And as I walked down the aisle, stepping into the terminal, I couldn't shake the feeling that I would see her again.